All righty. And we are live. Welcome everybody in. Welcome. Waiting for everybody to fill in. We got a lot to talk about today. Sorry about yesterday. I know I was looking forward to doing a stream, and then my service provider just was out like all day. And then it came back on at like 9 p.m. my time, and I was like, I can't do a live stream right now. So it's all good. We're here today. We got more news. Scott should consider projecting his map onto his head. Feel for how the curvature of the Earth affects ballistics. The Coriolis effect, my friend, and you can see it. It's almost perfect. That's funny. That's a good joke. Congratulations. You're a funny person. Give map. You will get map. You will get map for sure. Welcome everybody in. Welcome. Hey Zach, how are you doing? Welcome everybody. It's good to see all of you in here. We have actually so much to talk about. We have a Putin speech where he directly addressed the West in regards to potential Storm Shadow and ATACMS strikes on Russian territory, which we haven't had any confirmation of yet. I do believe that ATACMS has been used on Russian territory. I don't believe that we are going to see an immediate response in any way. I don't think it suits Russia. Everybody is basically talking about nukes or something like that. And I'm going to go into very, very good detail about how Russia is probably going to respond, what it's going to look like, and what it means, just given the situation that they're in. If Russia lashes out and uses a nuke or strikes NATO territory, that doesn't do them any good, unfortunately. And they're going to continue to make threats because they need to make threats in that way. But that's a lose-lose. That doesn't serve their interests right now. So that's not going to happen. I hope you guys aren't expecting at least an intentional Russian strike against NATO anytime soon. All right. Before we get started, guys, if you want to follow me on my other social medias and my other reporting outlets, you can go to the YouTube description. You can find my Telegram and my Twitter. That's where I post all the time, 24/7. You get live stream updates when I'm going to be doing live streams. I saw somebody said these live stream times are so random. Yes, they are. Sometimes I just have stuff going on at 12 and I just have to push it back. And sometimes I want to do a later one because I like to get other people in here. I know that people like it when their YouTubers are on a schedule or whatever, and I'm sorry. Maybe in the future. I'm not much of a schedule guy, just regularly. I kind of go with the flow. If you guys want to support me further, if you enjoy my work, if you enjoy the free content, remember, none of my content is ever going to be any of the actual reporting content news. I do some content that is behind a paywall, but that is it's not important to the overall your overall knowledge of the conflict. It will help it because I go into combat footage and stuff that I can't show on YouTube. But if you want to see that, go over to my Patreon, join my Patreon there. You can find the first 2 episodes of Demonetized. The 3rd and 4th episode will be going up tomorrow and this weekend. So the 3rd one has already been filmed. The 4th one's already set up. I just wasn't able to upload it yesterday. I just got home today. So I'll get it up as soon as we're done here. But yeah, go over and check that out. That's some extra content. You guys get to see some actual combat footage. I kind of go into it a little bit, talk about the significance of specific events and videos that we have from about the last week. So if you enjoy that sort of stuff, go check that out. All right. Like I said, greetings. We have a ton to talk about today, like a ton to talk about. So let's go over to the map. The good old map, the map. As you can see, the green Russian advances have improved significantly. This one is actually old, and I forgot to get rid of it. So while I start talking here, I'm going to get rid of this one real fast. If you guys don't know how I do my map, I will leave the map green in the areas that you're seeing like this. And then as soon as I do my live stream, I will erase it. So as soon as the live stream is over, the Russian advance gets erased and is confirmed as Russian-controlled territory. So, first things first, in the Robotyne salient, we have a Russian advance into a fortified location just east of Robotyne. This is important because this is the last fortification that, you know, the last defendable area that the Ukrainians really have in this southern, just in this pocket, I guess you would say, just south of Kharkiv. So the Ukrainians are now at the point basically where they're being pushed back into the security zone. Remember, they reached something like 10 kilometers deep. Hello? Now they are like at the most 5 kilometers. So this salient, the Ukrainian counteroffensive, all of the men and material that were lost trying to push here, all for naught. And now the Russians are just slowly pushing it out. And they're not even really pushing that hard here. It's just the Ukrainian lines are weak and the Russians can take advantage of that. So that's what's going on here. All right, moving over to the southern Donetsk area. This is where we have seen the most improvement by the Russians. And specifically, I remember talking to you guys about what the Kharkov operation meant. I should do this so it's bigger. I don't know why I'm doing that. What the Kharkov operation meant, right? Some of the people in this information space, pro-Ukrainian, neutral, for whatever reason, I would say probably the less educated. I don't mean educated as in like their actual education. I mean their means of analysis are not that great because they obviously got this completely wrong. I believe that a lot of people were under the assumption that the Russians were going to go for Kharkov, or potentially try to do some big push down towards Izum or Chernihiv or anything like that. I had said that this would be like the maximum goal of any Russian. Like if there was a complete collapse here and the Ukrainians were just getting routed away, I thought that at most they would be able to come down the Sovetski Donetsk Canal here and reach Chernihiv and then put this entire salient at risk. That would be the greatest. But what I thought was more realistic is that we were just going to see border skirmishes. Take what the Ukrainians did in 2023 and 2024 with their Russian Free Legion groups and AFU supported that were going across the border and trying to occupy Russian towns on this side of the border. That's exactly what the Russians are doing now in Ukraine, except they're doing it successfully. And this is a mirror operation of what the Ukrainians tried to do twice and failed both times. They wanted to cause a problem on a new section of the front and force the Russians to rotate troops to the Belgorod region away from, I believe it was Bakhmut at the time. I think it was Bakhmut, Soledar Bakhmut, when they did the first incursion. And then the second one was around Avdiivka. So they tried to do the same thing twice, failed both times. The Russian border services did an excellent job of removing the Ukrainians. And then the Russians just did the exact same thing. But what happened when the Russians went across, where the Ukrainian lines were incredibly weak here, corruption had prevented fortifications from being built. And the Russians just sort of walked in this like 10 kilometers and really put the Ukrainians on the back foot, captured a big chunk of Volochansk, which is a major city on the border, and forced 40,000 Ukrainian rotation, 40,000 man Ukrainian rotation to this region to create a 3-to-1 manpower disparity for the Ukrainians, and then begin to push the Russians out of this region. That is exactly what the Russians wanted. I don't know. I don't know what the Ukrainians are thinking here. They talked about it at the beginning of the year. Zelensky came out and said, we're on active defense, right? I'm pretty sure. Sorry, I was looking for my phone. Zelensky came out and said, we are on active defense, right? And what that means, or not active defense, we are in a defensive posture. So what that means is there are not supposed to be any offensive operations by the Ukrainians happening across the map. They are in a defensive posture, until they can build up their manpower and equipment again with Western support, potentially. I don't think it's possible at this point to do anything like we saw in the South. But, that's what they were saying. That was at least their excuse for why they were never going to go on the offensive again. And what the Russians have just done with this operation has forced the Ukrainians in their downtime to again go on the offensive and suffer higher casualties and try to push the Russians out of this region. It's not working. The Ukrainians are suffering horrible losses in manpower and equipment. Mostly artillery systems are getting rocked in this region. A lot of SPGs, a lot of grads, and a lot of the spare artillery ammunition that the Ukrainians have just received actually just went to Kharkov, which is not where it was supposed to go, right? That's the Kharkov area is not where you want the ammo to be spent. This was a quiet front before, this year when you decided to go across and start shelling these civilian areas, Belgorod, Shebenko, like these places. This would not be happening right now if the Ukrainians didn't do what they did. I mean, it could be happening. You don't know. The Russians might just be using all of that as an excuse to do this operation and force all this Ukrainian rotation. This is a smart idea by the Russians. I'm not saying that it was specifically because of that, but the Russians used that excuse, right? They gave them the excuse they needed. They warned them. They said that they were going to create a buffer zone if the Ukrainians kept crossing the border and shelling. They continue to do it, and this is what we're seeing now. And you're going to see this along the entire front line here. I guarantee it by the end of this. And at a certain point, I mean, the line will collapse, and then this will become much more than just a buffer zone. But that's what it is just for right now. And this has completely done its job. I just want everybody who's listening to understand how impactful this Kharkov operation has been to the rest of the front and how far back it has set the Ukrainians in their recomposition of their military. This is a Bakhmut 2.0. The Ukrainians were building up for the summer counteroffensive down here. They were building up. And then what happened? The Russians decided in it was like December when Soledar fell. And then from December on, Bakhmut was just this meat grinder for the Ukrainian armed forces. And they sent units that were supposed to be participating in the counteroffensive in here. They were attrited heavily, and it hurt the overall quality of this grouping, which then attacked and failed in the southern direction. So that's what the Russians did up here again. While the Ukrainians are trying to recomp their manpower, trying to, they're grabbing people from all of these cities and throwing them in vans and beating the shit out of them. I've seen 20 videos in the past 3 days of people being physically abused, like knocked out, drug into vans. I've seen multiple videos of Ukrainian citizens resisting mobilization by enlistment officers. It's becoming, you can start to feel that Ukraine is smoldering. The population is at its end. A population can only take so much. And while everybody's focused on the battlefield, it'll be funny if it's, if what ends up being the downfall of the Ukrainian ability to fight is the fact that the domestic situation deteriorates so significantly. And that could happen. I mean, we just got a report that Ukraine is now going to mobilize emergency services, which are firefighters and policemen. So you say you get rid of half of the policemen, right? The other half is working for the enlistment officers. They help. We've seen cops arresting people with the help in the presence of military enlistment officers. If that happens, there's going to be higher crime and a higher propensity for civilians to protest, and the crackdown to not be quite as significant just because of the lack of government, police. So this is another thing that can happen. It's you got to watch all aspects. There's economic aspects, which Ukraine is actually not doing horribly economically, at least in the West. They're not doing anywhere near what they were doing before the war, obviously, because they lost a huge chunk and all their manpower is gone. But considering they're being propped up pretty well. But domestically, they're starting to run into a lot of issues. The population is just getting tired. It's been 2.5 years of war, and the lies from the Ukrainian government just kind of get more and more ridiculous. And the ideas that they're pushing are not ideas that are good for Ukraine. They're ideas that are really bad for Ukraine, and the Ukrainian people are suffering for it. So I don't know. We'll see. It's going to be a big deal. But getting back to the actual advances, with all of the Ukrainian forces being pulled up into the Kharkov region, with all of the attention and ammunition and everything going to this region, HIMARS are being fired up here, potentially ATACMs and Storm Shadows. This is not the area where you want to be suppressing like the Russian logistics and stuff like that. This is PR. This is all PR. This right here, this is critical to Ukraine. And you can see how much the Russians are now advancing in the south. They have reactivated south of Pibieta into this northern high ground, the high ground north of Konstantinivka and Perskakivka, which I have been talking about for weeks, guys, right? The Russians have had a really hard time moving here because the Ukrainians have been just dug in very well and defending it. The Russians are now advancing. Perskakivka has been, Perskovivka has been completely captured by Russian forces. So this town is now captured. We also have an advance south of Perskakivka and south of Konstantinivka, which now the town is basically within assault range. So we will likely hear that the Russians have entered Konstantinivka either from the north or from the south in the coming days. This is a very big deal, and I'll explain why. And I've talked about this multiple times, and I told you guys, I said, I know Kharkov is exciting. I know you want Sumy, you want all of that, but this is the important area. This is always the important area. This is where the defenses are. This is where a majority of the army is. This is the area that needs to fall first. And the area that I've seen the most units getting pulled out of is this southern Donetsk region. And so for months and months and months, I've been saying, guys, keep your eyes on Pokrovsk. At the end of May, early June, when the Russians activate, that area is going to be incredibly weak. What I didn't expect was a very smart Kharkov operation, which actually pulled a large number of Ukrainians away. We've been hearing about this for 2 years. So I always put these rumors on a back burner. And the incursion wasn't built up very well. So it was a very small incursion force. I didn't expect the Russians to do that. The Russians did it. It paid off tremendously. And now you are seeing the results down here in the south. So here, this is one of the more important advancements. These two, both in the direction of the 0532. This one is along the road, which is significant because roads are important in this region. I just like this little orange field. I don't know what it is. It's like flowers or something, but I always look at it because it's like, it stands out. I don't see anything else like that around. But for whatever reason, right here, I like this orange field. That's my good vibes for today, guys. That orange field is what's up. All right. But this advance towards the 0532, which now puts them what? I mean, they're almost within rifle range, right? Hello? No, over more than rifle range. It's hard to look at this map sometimes, man. The distances are deceiving. But well within mortar range, well within FPV range, well within Lancet range. And as soon as the Russians approach and actually physically cut this road, supply to Vadyan is going to become much, much more difficult. They will still be able to do it through this dirt road back behind, but there's not really significant roads over here, guys. You can see that these roads are just dirt on the side of the field. They are usable at the current moment, but when you reduce the number of routes that a place can be supplied through, you can really focus your ISR on taking out logistics coming through one direction. So that's what the Russians are going to try to do. Put pressure on Konstantinivka, cut the 0532 supply line, make it reach, put pressure on Vadyan. And then once that happens, an operation towards Ugledar should begin, because Ugledar will be completely cut off from supplies, except through, I think that there's like a dirt path that kind of comes down like this that they used last time, potentially. So something like that exists. But again, it's going to be very easy to concentrate artillery on this road and push. The issue, obviously, minefields in the area, stuff like that. Hopefully the Russians approach it different than they did last time. But I think with the encirclement from the top, pushing towards Vadyan and capturing Konstantinivka and making this whole mess up here, it's going to make this operation much more easier because the ability for the Ukrainians to actually keep Ugledar supplied with manpower and ammunition and stuff is going to be incredibly difficult. And this place has been bombed mercilessly, so we'll see. We'll see. It should be interesting. I think this whole southern Donetsk area is about to see some major shifts. All right. We have a Russian advance towards the edge of the reservoir at Netalove. They are very close to Kharkivka now. Once this reservoir is secured, it's going to make Russian operations in this region much, much simpler. They'll have a strong line of defense along the reservoir. They can begin pushing out if they wish. But what I think is going to happen is they are going to begin to push north, try to capture this next line of defense, along with pushing along the rail line up here and putting pressure on Sokil and this other line of defense. So there's a line of defense that runs kind of right through here, and then one that kind of runs right through here. And they've both been interrupted and breached by this Orchitnik collapse. Up to the north, we have an advance towards Novo-Alexandrivka. We also have another Russian advance claimed by Deep State. I have not seen the geolocation yet, but for right now, I'll just do this so you guys can see it. This came out like right before the video started, so I'm not going to actually keep it on my map, but I'm just going to show you guys that there is movement in this area. So something like this was reported by Deep State, which is a Ukrainian source, shows that the Russians are activating along the entire southern line. You can see all the green. I mean, the Russians are moving. I don't know, the cope right now, the Ukrainians are so hyper-focused in this region, and there's been a small Ukrainian advance inside of Vovchansk because they are pushing here. Vovchansk is completely destroyed. This place has been leveled. There's been so much fighting over in this town over the last month. The amount of artillery glide bombs from both sides has been unbelievable. This place just kind of doesn't exist anymore. So they're fighting in rubble. This is exactly what the Russians want. Russians have an artillery advantage. They don't have a manpower advantage, but they have air superiority in this region. And they can drop bombs wherever they want. They can launch artillery strikes wherever they want. Russian ISR, Iskanders, everything constantly are working on the Kharkov region. That's the way the cookie crumbles. So the focus on this getting bogged down makes no sense to me. It's what it really looks like is that the Ukrainians are getting bogged down here. Yeah, here we go. Putin admitted to 270,000 irrecoverable losses, which is injuries and KIA, which is almost exactly what the United States put on their high end of their estimate in January or December. So that kind of falls. That makes sense. But just propaganda numbers, you can't really listen to stuff like that super close. Thank you, Iris. I appreciate it, man. Or female. I don't think so, but I would appreciate if you were a female follower, but I think for the most part, I have male audience, which is great. Yeah, no problem. No problem for that clarification. All right, so let's head over to the other areas of the map where we have some slight Russian advances. I'm going to delete this until I have a geolocation for that. I think I talked about this in the last one. I don't know why there's a white line right there, but we have a small Russian advance out of Ivanivsky, just a geolocation along this tree line. Again, the Russians don't seem to be pushing with any great vigor here. They were for a little while. They captured Kleshchivka, Andriivka, and then they seem to slow down. They just do exactly what I've been talking about, stretching and pulling the Ukrainians, bringing them up north, then advancing down south. As soon as they bring reserves down south, they advance wherever the line is weaker. They're just going to keep doing that and keep doing that until something snaps. I have done this multiple times now, and it won't save for some reason. All right. We have a small Russian advance into Kalinina. Russian geolocation was spotted here. Again, I don't know if I said this one last time, but this is the more recent Russian advance into the residential area and along the, I believe this is a railroad track. Yeah, along the railroad track, right next to the micro canal district of Chasiv Yar. This is under extreme pressure. Again, this area kind of doesn't exist anymore. It's rubble. And we still don't have any geolocations across the river, but we have reports of Russian DRGs moving through this forest regularly. So going to leave that purple for now. Okay, one more unconfirmed Russian advance. This is, so when I do unconfirmed Russian advances, I usually do it based off of, I have like a minimum of 3 sources that I trust that confirm the same advance. I try to make sure the information comes from different original sources for them. If I can, I try my best. But I'm leaving this purple for now because we don't actually have a geolocation for this advance. But it is claimed that the Russians have advanced to the east of Razdalivka. This is a significant advance in this region. It puts Razdalivka in a very difficult situation with the Russians now being on the flank back behind it. We will see if this stands. I'm waiting for the geolocation before I turn any of this green. But the Russians have been pushing along this railroad here and along this entire salient and also trying to capture Sporne as well. It's just the Ukrainian defense in this region has been outstanding. The brigades here have done an amazing job defending this area. And I don't think the Russians have put a ton of energy. So this has been probably one of the more stable areas of the front. And it is significant because this push into Bilohorivka has definitely set the Russians back quite a bit from what they could have been doing if they would have maintained control of the Shcherbiansky forestry here. We have one small advance just south of Novoselivka, or Novoselisivki. I don't understand why they have to put apostrophes in the middle. Like, they're just trying to be different. It's so annoying. Anyway, one small advance up along this tree line and along this sort of creek bed right here. Very small, nothing major. There are reports of some advances in the Sinkivka area. I think I saw a geolocation right here. I haven't mapped it yet, haven't gone into this area as much. It's so back and forth in gray zone right here. The Ukrainians work very hard to defend Sinkivka in this area from the Russians to prevent them from reaching Kupiansk. So, all right, that's the map for today, guys. That is the map. I just started watching, no spoilers. All right. We have some stuff to talk about today outside of the map. Where do we want to start? Everybody? We can start with some of Putin's recent statements. I actually will bring those up so I can read some of those to you guys real fast. Putin had a little bit of a speech today, a little bit of a presser, talked to some news outlets, made some statements, some pretty important stuff. I would say some policy changes in the way that the Russians are talking. Usually you can tell what's going on with the Russians by the way they are communicating. I feel like throughout this war, I've seen the Russians trying to communicate through their public statements made by government officials such as Putin, Lavrov. I don't pay as much attention to Medvedev because I think he's just kind of an antagonist. But I mean, he's still an official, so you take what he says with a grain of salt, but you still take what he says. So I'm just going to read a quote. Putin said today, Moscow will consider an asymmetric response to the supply of weapons for attacks on the Russian Federation. The president of Russia noted that Russia can supply its long-range weapon systems to regions of the world from where there will be sensitive blows to countries supplying weapons to Ukraine. So again, another threat. You supply proxies with weapons to hit us. We're going to supply proxies with weapons to hit you. Could that be who knows? And then this is part of it. It's a strategic ambiguity thing, right? Russia has now leveled a veiled threat to the United States, Britain, and France and Germany that if they allow Ukraine to use their Storm Shadows, Scalps, ATACMS, I don't know if HIMARS are in that same grouping. Just because I personally consider HIMARS to be guided multiple launch rocket system. So it's not, I would say it's different than like cruise missiles and ballistic missiles. However, I don't know how the Russians are going to approach that because the Ukrainians have been firing Western artillery, MLRS and stuff into Belgorod region for as long as I can remember, a year and a half now. This isn't a new thing. HIMARS is a new thing, but it's still just guided artillery. It's not like a tactical ballistic missile that could potentially be nuclear capable, or a cruise missile, which could also potentially be nuclear capable. That's a threat, guys. The threat, I mean, the Russians don't want to get hit in on their air bases and in country and stuff. They've enjoyed that protection the entire war. But the issue is not so much that these bases could be hit. The issue is more that the systems being delivered and the step that's being taken has greater implications than just airplanes getting destroyed in an airbase in a war or something like that. It has much greater implications. The implications are that these weapons could be used to deliver a first strike. And how do you know where it's coming from? How do you know when it's going to come? This is the reason why the Russians don't want NATO in Ukraine. They don't want these weapon systems on their border. And they ended up getting it. So what's going to end up happening is this is the red line. Everybody wants to talk about nukes. Everybody wants to talk about Europe getting hit, NATO bases getting hit, whatever, this, that, and the other. Not going to happen, guys. That doesn't serve Russia's interests in this SMO at all, in this war at all. What Russia wants to do is Russia wants to win. And when you're playing chess, you don't throw the chessboard. That's what a nuke is. That's what attacking NATO is. Why would you do that? You don't want to do that. You don't want to just, why mess up a good thing you have going for you, right? The Russians feel like they're winning. You can tell by the way that they're maneuvering, the way that they're posturing. They feel that they're winning. Their economy is going strong. The domestic situation is great. Putin has completely solidified his position in Moscow. It looks like they're doing kind of a large purge of a lot of the more corrupt officials. Some of the old heads are getting pushed out. That doesn't mean that there's not corruption. That doesn't mean that they're fixing things. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it looks like changes are coming, and that's a pretty big deal. And when you're winning, you don't give the enemy the opportunity to come and change the calculus, right? That's not what you want to do. So while the Russians might look weak, these red lines will just be enforced later. And that's the thing, is that you don't have to react right away. I almost feel like it's a Western sort of line of thinking. It's like, if something happens to you, you just got to get back. You got to get back. And if you don't, you lose, or you're weak, or whatever. I don't think that that's the right way of going about it. Sit back, let them do all of the things that you told them not to do. And then every single opportunity you get in the future, you fuck them. That's how you win a war. That's the Russians are winning right now in Ukraine. NATO cannot keep Ukraine supplied with ammunition, artillery. They went to the third world to buy shells, and 250,000 of them, of the 500,000 that the Czechs were trying to provide, were like no good. Like that's the situation we're in. Ukraine is running out of manpower. The regime is on its last legs. Zelensky is polling horribly. They're probably going to replace him within the year. Why would you throw the chessboard right now? Why would you start creating new propaganda for your enemy? Why would you entice your enemy to join the conflict? Why? So I get a lot of people are like, Putin weak, this, that. It's so infuriating, guys. He's leading a country in a war that could potentially result in the destruction of the planet. These are not children. This is not a video game. You do not just react. You do not do stuff that does not suit you, does not, go in the direction of your interests. all of that is just what people want to see for the entertainment value. They want that FAFO, dude. They want everybody to know that Ukraine is weak. And I get it. There's the deterrence aspect. If you don't do anything, the West is just going to keep walking all over you. Guys, I don't know if you know the West. They're going to do it anyway. If you react to them, that gives them the excuse. The way you beat them is you make them bored and tired. And that's what the Russians are going to do. They're going to make it cost too much money. They're going to bore the West. They're going to, like the public, bore the public. And then once it becomes too much of a liability, they're going to drop it. That's how you beat the West in this instance. If you escalate, they will escalate with you. They are not going to back down. That is not how Americans work. Take it as an American. If somebody escalates against me, my first thought is I have to get back at them. And I have to fight myself so hard when I'm doing analysis, because I agree with you guys. I mean, I'm Western too. I want people to get the shit slapped out of them the second they do something worth getting slapped for, right? But you go to jail if you slap somebody for assault. Is that the smart thing to do? No. You wait and you get them back later. What is that? What is that old saying? What is it? It's something like revenge is a dish best served cold, right? I think that's what we were talking about. So let's see. Do you think NATO might start something before the elections? Yes, I've said the whole time that I believe Biden will get the United States into a war. I don't know if it'll be NATO. But I do believe that Biden will try to create some sort of war. I do not think the Democrats have any chance of winning this election. I think they know it. I think that's why they're trying to do this whole felony thing. It's a complete joke. I think it has actually only helped Trump. And again, guys, I'm not a big Trump guy. I think that if Trump gets into office, he's going to go right along with the whole Israel thing. And I don't really support that. I'm not a big MAGA guy in general. But also the GOP is a complete joke. I think Trump is better than anybody in the GOP. So, but yeah, I really do think that we could be looking at a war, because no wartime president has ever not been reelected. The only example of that, I think, was it Vietnam? I can't remember, but I think Vietnam, when Kennedy got elected, and Vietnam, when Kennedy got elected, and then he got assassinated, and then was it Nixon that came in, and then Nixon didn't get reelected after that? Can't remember. Something like that, though. But every single wartime president, if you're in a war during your presidency, the odds of you getting reelected are like 100%. So it's a good strategy. Yeah, the Vietnam War. So that's the only example of that, but that he was also not an elected president. He was a vice president who became a president. So nobody really voted for him to begin with. Do you vote for Biden? No. What are you talking about? How could you vote for Biden? How? Say that he was the only option. How do you vote for Biden? You don't vote. The dude is like 1,000,000 years old. He can't talk. You're not voting for him. You're voting for his cabinet, who can be replaced and switched around and changed at any time. You don't know who's running operations. You don't know who's lobbying who. It's ridiculous, guys. Please do not vote for Biden. Please do not vote for Biden. That is a horrible choice. If you vote for Biden, you have to be one of those people that is so ideologically against Trump that you can't see your own nose, because you're so blinded by whatever that is, that Trump derangement syndrome shit. I don't know what that is. Guys, if Trump gets elected, he's not going to do anything. It's going to be this exact same as his first 4 years. He's going to be deadlocked. The establishment doesn't like him. If you want a do nothing president, vote for Trump. If you want like a little bit of a reversal of the current policy, but still nothing really gets done, go with Trump. If you want a continuing deteriorating situation in the United States, vote for Biden. You'll get what you get. They're not good options, guys. Neither of these are good options. I'm telling you. They're not good options. Let me see if there was anything else that I wanted to talk about. Putin also said that he believes that Zelensky is going to be removed from office, and that that the West is pushing very, very hard to reduce the mobilization age in Ukraine. I don't know if this is true. I want to ask for the source where Putin got that, but he has his intelligence services, so he might actually have a source. I don't know. And this is to talk about losses. So per Vladimir Putin, there are currently 1,348 Russian servicemen held as POWs in Ukraine and 6,465 Ukrainian servicemen in Russia. Further, Putin states that the ratio of irrecoverable losses between Russia and Ukraine is approximately 5-1. Guys, this is not my opinion. This is just a statement. I don't think a 5-1 ratio is likely. I think it's probably a little bit less than that, just because. Again, propaganda numbers. You're going to say what you need to say to make it sound good. However, the Russians have not really specifically come out in the last 2.5 years and talked about losses dramatically. I think at one point at like the year up, did a little anniversary meeting that was televised where Shoigu and whoever the press guy is for the MOD came out, and they were talking about losses and stuff. But the Russians never really talk about this. Ukrainians post how many Russians die every single day. It's a fake number, but they post it every single day, every single day. And the only I'm very cautious about saying that these numbers don't make sense or these numbers are fake, just because the Russians don't come out and Baghdad Bob it all the time. They do with certain things. They do with 10 missiles intercepted, trying to downplay a strike that happened, this, that, or the other. But they have not really come out and talked about Ukrainian casualties I like this. So, and for Putin to say it is kind of a big deal. Again, 5-1, I don't think that's realistic. Because that would be like, I mean, if you take what Putin said, what was it, 270,000 irrecoverable losses for the Russians, which is, you think 4-1 or 5-1 injury ratio, considering this is mostly a VOG FPV artillery war. So a lot of shrapnel injuries, a lot of lost limbs and stuff like that. You're talking like 80,000 to 100,000 KIA, and then 180,000 wounded in action, something like that. Irrecoverable wounded in action. There's more wounded in action than that, but some of those guys come back for sure. So it's just, you have to just kind of take everything with a grain of salt and understand that it's going to be, some of it is going to be, fake, obviously. The armed forces of Ukraine, lose approximately 50,000 soldiers, or 50,000 people per month, including both sanitary and irrecoverable losses. This is the reason Kiev attempts to carry out total mobilization. That's from Putin as well. So he's putting out some big numbers there. I think that the Russians are starting to feel that the domestic situation in Ukraine is starting to slip, and they're going to start pushing this sort of propaganda that the war is going much, much worse for the Ukrainians, try to really start to get that information out there, because it does have an effect, man. When you're talking about this and that information gets spread, it gets to more eyes. People just start to, that's how propaganda works. So we'll see. We'll see. It came out of nowhere. I think the most important aspect of this conversation was basically, of this whole event, this whole speech, was basically the policy shift that you can hear. The tone has significantly changed in the way Putin specifically is talking about the West. He is now referring to them as an enemy, as an adversary, and as a opponent. You missed my super chat, Scott. Did I? Oh, I did. Sorry, man. You think there might be a mobilization in Russia? No, sir. I do not think so. I think Russian recruitment numbers have been extremely high, and I think Russian losses have been extremely sustainable in Ukraine, probably for like the last year and a half. So no, I do not think that there will be another mobilization. I think that the Russians are playing very slow and very careful and not overextending themselves to the point where they will ever need another 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 man mobilization. I think that they have plenty of people that want. I mean, there are more jobs than just being some frontline assault team. You know, there are logistics jobs. It's not a bad thing to get a military job, especially during a war when money's just being pumped into it. It's not a bad thing. So I don't think that they're having any issues. It doesn't sound like it. They're not making it seem like it. Here's the thing. Do you see anybody getting pulled off the street in Russia ever? People film there all day. People have YouTube channels. Do you ever see a single instance of what we see in Ukraine 3 or 4 times a day? People getting beaten up, women fighting to defend men from getting dragged into vans. Do we see that in Russia ever? No, because Russia has so many more people. They don't need to do it. They don't need to. That's the thing. You have a popular war. It's very patriotic. The Russians can very easily see that the entire NATO alliance just kind of hates them for whatever reason. They don't hate Putin. I mean, they do hate Putin, but it's not just Putin, right? It's not like, oh, Saddam's the bad guy, but the Iraqis are okay and we can fix the nation. No, that's not the vibe that we're getting here. It's the Russians are the bad people. Collective punishment, sanction them all, reparations, all this, that, and the other. Russians can't do this. Russians can't do that. Russians are the problem. That was the biggest mistake the West made in this entire conflict, was allowing the Russophobia to destroy their ambiguity towards the Russians, I guess. I would say that you could have convinced a lot more liberal Russians to run away or to help the Ukrainian cause or the Western cause or whatever. But instead, you decided to make all 180 million Russians your enemy, and that was a gigantic mistake. That was a huge L. But they couldn't help it because Ukraine is Western Ukraine is historically very Russophobic. I mean, and most of the Soviet states are extremely Russophobic because of what the Soviets did. So that's just the way it goes. And when you turn against an entire population, don't be surprised when that entire population becomes hostile to you. All right. Let me see. I have a couple stories that I want to go over here. Ukraine is frustrated with NATO over the F-6, or frustrated with the U.S. over F-16 pilot trading. Ukrainian officials are pressing the U.S. and other countries to ramp up their F-16 pilot training, saying the current pipeline isn't producing enough aviators to fly jets that will soon be brought to Kiev. Ukraine says it has 30 pilots who are eligible to start training in the U.S. immediately, yet the Biden administration has told Kiev it lacks the school seats in its Arizona-based program to accept more than 12 pilots trainees at a time. According to people with direct knowledge of the request, 2 other facilities in Denmark and Romania have similar issues with available training spots. Hey, what the hell is that all about? Did somebody tell you a year ago when they announced that they were maybe going to send F-16s that the biggest issue would be training pilots? You know how hard it is to train pilots? Do you know why when a Russian plane goes down, it is so important to figure out if that pilot ejected or if he died? Russia is in a better position now. They've been at war for 2.5 years. Their training pipeline for pilots is probably extremely advanced and accelerated now. But pilots are multi-million-dollar investments. They are assets. They are worth as much as the plane itself almost at times. You don't want to lose your pilots. And the West does not have it goes with all of their military industrial capabilities. It's specialized, it's hyper focused, and it's incredibly cost effective. So there's no waste. You can only train 12 pilots at a time, but if you need to train 24, can you? No. If the Russians, this is the exact same thing with the artillery shells. If the U.S. only produces what they need and what they have orders for. The Russians have the production facilities just waiting. And that's like the difference between Western and Soviet, capitalism versus like state-run arms production, is that the Russians knew and the Soviets knew that they needed those facilities. Eventually, you're going to go to war. If you're a superpower, you're eventually going to go to war, and you need materials. If you destroy your factories because you don't need them anymore, when you do need them, you don't have them. And that's what's happening in the West. But in the West, private companies own those. And if you're just sitting on a piece of land with a dead factory on it that's not getting orders and not producing anything, that's spillage, that's waste, that's money out of your pocket. You can't allow that. That's the difference. So the US can train 12 pilots at a time because that's what it needs. How many pilots does the US lose every year? 0, right? Or maybe 1 or 2 in a crash or something like that. But no, there's no attrition rate on pilots in the West. So 12 F-16, you're never going to need to train more than 12 F-16 pilots at a time. There's never that turnover in the F-16 program here. Now, when you need to train people for a war, say all of your F-16 pilots get hit at a F-16 party, and a gas explosion happens, and you lose all of them, and now you're going to war and you don't have any F-16 pilots. What are you going to do? Train 12 at a time over a year? It doesn't make sense, right? So this is an issue. I talked about it a year ago. We're seeing it play out right in front of us. F-16s, first off, are no different than a MiG in Ukraine. Radar signature, nothing's different. They're not going to provide any new capabilities that the converted MiGs already provide. And the airfields are also going to be a major issue. It's very obvious that the F-16s need major logistics trains. They need to be staged at a base. That base is going to be extremely exposed, and the Russians are going to hit it. We've already seen it. They've already been doing it. They did it three times in a row in a week. They hit the base in Klimitsky, so where the F-16s are supposed to be based out of. Not necessarily, but the airfield fits the specifications. The whole landing on highways, yeah, technically you can land a plane on a highway. You can take off a plane on a highway. Depending on how quality that highway is, I don't know how good Ukraine's highways are. Europe's highways are much, much, much higher standard than even US highways. So, landing an F-16 in Denmark is different than landing, or in Germany is different than landing an F-16 in Eastern Ukraine or Western Ukraine. So that whole thing is ridiculous. Also, the damage that can happen to a vehicle when you're not landing in an appropriate airfield, to landing gear, to stuff like that, the attrition on these planes is going to be much higher, and you only have 12 of them, right? Because you only have 12 pilots. So that's what you're dealing with. And this whole thing was the biggest nothing burger of all time. The West does not have the means and the capabilities to train pilots, supply the aircraft, the airframes, the munitions for the airframes, the logistics for all of the airframes that Ukraine actually needs. They need like probably 98 F-16s to actually get what they need to get done, what they need to get done. They're not getting that anytime soon. This was, they were supposed to have F-16s at the end of May. That's what I was told. I said, whoa, wait for those F-16s at the end of May. They never came. So I don't know. This was just the weirdest one. HIMARS made sense. ATACMS Storm Shadows provide a new edge, a new dimension. F-16s do not. They're going to be doing the exact same thing MiGs and Su-24s are doing. They're going to be glorified missile carriers. All right. Do you know why it has to be F-16s and not something else? Because it's just like the available aircraft. They're not going to send F-35s. They're not going to send F-22s. Europe doesn't want to send their Gripens. Nobody wants to send any of these planes. They don't even want to send these F-16s. They didn't want to send Abrams. They didn't want to send Challengers. That it's just a face-saving measure. They're just trying to show that they're doing something. That's all it is. This does not do anything for Ukraine. What Ukraine needs is hundreds of thousands of men and a boatload of artillery. That's what they need. If they don't get that, it doesn't matter. Oh, and air defenses, which the West can't provide, and radars, which the West can't provide. Yes, send the F-4 Phantoms. Send them in. Yeah, I don't know. Also, the Ukrainians have lost so many airframes. They were donated. They got basically every spare airframe and spare part from the Soviet states, Su-24s, MiG-29s, Su-25s. They got literally everything that was in stock, and we see a couple MiGs every now and then go up. I mean, rarely now. So, yeah, it's kind of a rough situation to be in. All right, have another article here. This is what I had talked about already, but I just wanted to show you guys. Putin warns that Russia could supply arms to other countries to strike the West. Russian President Vladimir Putin has slammed the West's delivery of long-range weapons to Ukraine, warning Moscow could supply similar arms to countries to attack Western targets. Now, what does this mean? This could mean a number of things. First off, Syria, if you gave Syria some really good air defenses, they might have an opportunity to defend themselves against an Israeli F-35, right? There's a means of escalation right there. The U.S. does not want their F-35s to get shot down. This is a possibility, a way to do that. You can supply whatever you want to North Korea. The Russians are already doing this. They already have great new trade agreements with North Korea. And the North Koreans are getting bold. They're going to be a new issue on the peninsula that the U.S. it's just another hot spot to watch, another area that they have to keep an eye on. And when they're trying to focus on Taiwan, you don't want a second issue in the Pacific region to deal with. So again, another area that the West or Russia could deliver weapons to. Some people are saying Yemen and the Houthis. I don't really think that's necessary. The Iranians seem to be covering that very well. Hezbollah, and don't really see a reason for that. But there are plenty of proxies in the world that Russia could covertly arm to do damage and cause issues for the Americans all over the world, just like the Americans are causing an issue for the Russians with their proxy, right? So this is a change of language. This is not, if you do this, we might nuke you. No, this is, hey, we're going to go screw with you all around the world now because you're doing it to us. This is a legitimate tone change from the Kremlin. All right. Let's see. We got a question here. Yo, Scott, and then the next 3 medium towns to fall in order, please. Oh, man. This dude's trying to get me got. All right, hold on. Let me go over the map real fast. The next 3 towns to fall to the Russians will probably be Krasnohorivka, at least this portion of Krasnohorivka. I don't know how long the fighting is going to take on this outer reservoir edge. But I believe that Krasnohorivka is probably its days are numbered, considering the Russians control almost all of the high-rise buildings in this area, as well as a majority of the fortifications. It all depends on where the Russians decide to push. But yeah, Krasnohorivka is probably the next larger town. Konstantinivka, I don't know if you consider that a medium-sized town. I would say it's probably on the smaller side, but this is an important area that is probably going to get pushed very well. Or very soon. And then the next giant battle I think we're going to see is probably a New York Donetsk. I don't know if the Russians are actually going to assault these positions frontally, but they are going to work along the edge. Remember what I talked about with my prediction for this? The Russians are going to work along this highway and then apply pressure through Stopochki to Konstantinivka while also working in Chasiv Yar. This is not I just mapped it just so you guys could see the salient being formed around Donetsk in New York. Again, these are 8-year fortifications here, so very, very strong. The Russians do not want to frontally assault this. And if they can cut off supply through the few roads that actually run into this area, they should be able to force a Ukrainian withdrawal. Especially considering Ukraine is having massive manpower issues. They're going to have to start deciding what areas of the map they're going to sacrifice. Another area that the Russians seem to be pushing with some intensity is Seversk. So you could begin to see fighting in these smaller towns with the aims of making it to Seversk. And again, my overall prediction is that the Russians are going to push hard for Pokrovsk in the south, in this area. Those are my little predictions there for you, I guess. Why do so many Russians not have optics in 2024? Does anybody have optics? Is optics like a... I don't know what you mean by optic. You mean on their guns? That's pretty normal for most infantry. I mean, you really don't need an optic that often. I mean, iron sights and a red dot when you're in a trench laying suppressive fire, it doesn't really do that much different, right? Like it doesn't. So I don't know what you mean by that. If they're a specialized unit, they definitely have optics. Some guys buy optics to put on their guns, but for the most part, when you just are given an AK, any of the firefighting you've seen has been at like 4 feet away. Somebody sticks an AK out of a trench or out of a hole and just goes like this. I mean, it's a lot of the firefights are not, action, John Wick action movies where you need a red dot or an ACOG or some larger magnification scope. Also, that shit's expensive and it just breaks. I don't know if you guys have ever done any tactical work in your entire lives, clearing like a kill house or anything like that. But bro, shit just breaks. And those optics on top, especially the electronic ones, they break. They just break all the time. So you just knock that shit on something, broken. Sucks. Then you have to take it off. Iron sights aren't bad, usually, if you're good at shooting. All right. Okay. Last thing I wanted to talk about was a little bit of the Israeli situation. Hezbollah has stepped up attacks significantly. We've seen attacks on a Israeli barracks. We've seen attacks on a Iron Dome system. That will be in my next demonetized video, actually. That just came out today. An Iron Dome was taken out clear as day. Didn't even look like it responded. The Israelis look like their border reconnaissance has been completely wiped. I know that we saw Hezbollah striking radars, cameras, stuff like that, all along the border for months and months and months. I think it has had a significant effect on Israel's just vision, just its ability to see incoming threats and stuff like that. It has been significantly degraded in the north. I think that the Israelis are planning to go to war either in southern Lebanon or just with Hezbollah on the border. I think that decision's already been kind of made. And I think Hezbollah has also kind of made this decision because over the last couple of days, we have seen a significant uptick in strikes and Israeli casualties and stuff like that. So I'm not going to touch on this a whole lot because it's just the region, but be on the lookout. I do think we're going to see an expanded war in southern Lebanon very soon. Also, in the region, Iran just made a statement saying that they will respond to Israel for Israel's assassination of an IRGC member in Syria recently in a strike in Damascus. So again, Iran made it very clear the last time that if Israel takes out its leadership anywhere around the world, they will receive a response from Iran directly. So I don't know if that means we're going to see more missiles again coming from Iran to hit Israel. I don't know if this is going to be perhaps what we're seeing from Hezbollah is the response in the north right now. Time will tell, but the Israeli war cabinet definitely seems like they're ready to go. So yeah. Yep, another one. 2006 wasn't enough for them. Run it back, boys. All right. I'm going to sign off, guys. It's been an hour and 4 minutes and my throat is on fire. So if you guys liked this content, please like and subscribe, share, leave a comment. Just say, hey, you're gay looking or something like that. Make it funny. I don't care. I care about you all so much. I hope you have an amazing week and weekend. Look out for those videos. I'm going to try to do a live stream, I believe, Saturday. I think I'm very busy tomorrow. I don't know about Friday. We will see. But I'm going to have content coming out to you guys. And I will be posting nonstop on my Telegram and Twitter. So go check me out there. And if you want to see those demonetized videos, go sign up for my Patreon, guys. Thank you so much for all of your support over there. You guys are making my world go round, and I really appreciate it. And I really like bringing this content to you. So if you like it, just leave a like or something. Do something free for yourself. Don't spend money, but it helps me so much. So thank you. Have a great day. Have a safe weekend. Goodbye, guys.